Hello everybody and welcome back to another EDH gameplay video brought to you by Affinity for Commander. My name is Martin and today we have a game for you involving a very hungry titan, a very angry angel, a ship's captain and a corrupted robot. Honestly, you couldn't make this stuff up. But before we begin, I'd like to personally thank all of the absolutely amazing patrons listed on screen for their heartwarming generosity. We wouldn't be able to continue making videos such as these without your support, so thank you. Also, if you decide to make a purchase from any of these websites, then be sure to do so via our affiliate links in the video description. It won't cost you anything extra, but it really helps out the channel. And if you haven't already, then go and check out our latest sponsor, ordersleeves.com. where you can find incredible alternate art perfect fit sleeves to bling out your commander decks. Just be sure to mention that we're the ones that sent you. But that is enough of that, let's take a look at those opening hands.
Thomas is playing his Archangel Avacyn Stacks deck, which is designed to cut off his opponent's resources and protect him from their inevitable retaliation to this. He gives a starting hand containing Mark of Asylum, Aven Mind Sensor, Martyr's Bond, Secluded Step, 2 planes and a mountain.
I am playing my Brudiclad Telcore Engineer token deck, which aims to create a bunch of small cheap costed tokens and transform them into larger, scarier creatures with my commander's ability. I keep an opening hand of Ominous Seas, Goblin Slide, Emrakul's Hatcher, Siege Gang Commander, Spawning Bed, an Island and a Mountain.
Terrence is playing his Sisay Weatherlight Captain Shrine Tribal deck, which is designed to put as many shrines as possible onto the battlefield using his commander's ability. He begins the game with an opening hand of Sanctum of Shattered Heights, Sanctum of Calm Waters, Circuitous Route, a Plains, an Island, a Mountain and a Forest.
And finally, Tom is playing his Kroxa Titan of Death's Hunger Self-Mill deck, with his goal being to reanimate powerful creatures from his graveyard and to keep his opponent's hands low on cards with his commander's ability. His opening hand consists of Tormod's Crypt, Stitcher's Supplier, Skull Clamp, Sir Conrad the Grim, Foreboding Ruins and 2 Swamps.
Thomas wins the die roll, plays a Plains and passes to Martin.
I play an Island and pass.
Terrence plays Boros Guildgate and ends his turn.
Tom plays Canyon Slough and passes to Thomas.
Thomas plays a second Plains and taps out to cast Mark of Asylum. With nothing more to do, he passes the turn.
I play a Mountain and cast Ominous Seas before ending my turn.
Terrence plays Orzhov Guildgate and passes to Tom.
Tom plays Foreboding Ruins, revealing a swamp from his hand to have it enter untapped. Next he casts his commander, Kroxa Titan of Death's Hunger, forcing everybody else to discard a card with the giant CTB effect. I discard Emrakul's Hatcher and both Terrence and Thomas discard a land, losing 3 life. Tom then sacrifices Kroxa given that he did not cast him for his escape cost and passes the turn.
Thomas plays a Mountain and casts Blood Sun. He draws a card, apologises to Terrence for shutting off Maze's End, and ends his turn.
I draw, putting a foreshadow counter on my enchantment, and then play an island. Not yet finished, I cast Pia Nalar, creating a 1/1 Thopter token with flying thanks to her ability. Unable to do anything else, I pass to Terrence.
Terrence plays a Forest and casts his commander, Sisay Weatherlight Captain. Out of mana, he passes the turn.
Tom plays a Swamp and casts Stitcher's Supplier. He mills the top 3 cards of his library, casts Skull Clamp and equips the Painful Headwear to his zombie. This lowers his creature's toughness to 0, killing it and triggering both his Clamp and the Supplier's abilities. Tom mills 3, draws 2, and with nothing more to do, ends his turn.
Thomas plays Battlefield Forge and then casts Norn's Annex, paying 2 life to do so. Unable to cast any more annoying cards, Thomas passes to Martin.
I draw, putting another counter on Ominous Seas, and then play Spawning Bed. Next I cast Pia and Kiran Nalar, creating 2 more Thopters and sparking a debate as to how Pia would react seeing another iteration of herself standing with her formerly dead husband.
Are the kind of scenarios that only exist in Commander, and my fanfictions.
Moving to combat, I pay 2 life to Nun's Annex in order to attack Thomas of Pier, dealing him 2 damage. Satisfied with my board state, I then pass the turn.
Terence plays a swamp and taps out to cast Circuitous Route. He searches library for Golgari Guildgate and Izzet Guildgate, puts both gates into play tapped, and ends his turn.
Tom plays a swamp and casts Anye Falconwrath. He then casts Tormod's Crypt and passes to Thomas.
Thomas plays a Plains and passes without casting anything.
Much concern. I draw, put a Foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas, and then play Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. Next I cast Siege Gang Commander, creating 3 1/1 Goblin tokens, and move to combat. Here I pay 4 life to attack Thomas with my trio of Nalars, and Thomas responds by flashing in his commander, Archangel Avacyn. He blocks Pia and Karan, taking 2 damage from the lone Pia, who has to watch once again as her husband is brutally murdered. Unable to do anything else, I end my turn.
Terence starts his turn by playing a mountain, and then casts Sanctum of Calm Waters. Next he taps out to cast Sanctum of Shattered Heights, and passes to Tom, who responds by activating Anye's ability. He discards Big Game Hunter, draws a card, and casts the Assassin for his Madness cost. Tom chooses to destroy the now 4/4 Sisay with the creature's ETB, and untaps Anye, given that he discarded a card of Madness. Not yet finished, Tom activates his Vampire once more, this time discarding Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. He draws a new card to replace the demon, and then proceeds to his turn.
Tom plays a swamp and then casts the Kroxa in his graveyard for his escape cost. Thomas and I both discard non-land cards, but Terence decides to lose 3 life and discard a mountain.
Mad lad.
Tom then uses his remaining mana to equip his Skull Clamp to the Elder Giant, and with nothing more to do, passes the turn.
In his turn, Thomas plays Secluded Step, which enters untapped thanks to Bloodsun. Next he casts Orbs of Warding, giving himself hexproof, and then ends his turn.
I draw, put another counter on my enchantment, and cast Soul Ring. Next I use all of my remaining mana to cast my commander, Brudiclad Telcor Engineer, and move to combat. Here I create a 2/1 Mir token with Brudiclad's ability, and then have all of my tokens become Thopters, leaving me with 7 flying 1/1s, a middle-aged woman, a corrupted Mir, and a big old goblin. I then decide to attack Terence of Pia and Siege Gang Commander, dealing him 4 damage, and pass the turn to him.
Terence draws 2 and discards card with his Sanctum of Calm Waters, plays an island, and casts Blind Obedience.
Because the table needed another player casting stacks cards.
Not yet finished, Terence recasts Sisay, extorting the captain with Blind Obedience. Tom, Thomas, and Martin each lose a life, Terence gains 3, and with nothing more to do, Terence ends his turn. Tom responds to this by discarding and drawing with Anye, and then moves to his turn.
Tom begins his turn by playing a swamp and then casts Necromancy. He returns the Razaketh the Foul-Blooded in his graveyard to the battlefield and moves to combat, where he attacks me with Kroxa. Everyone other than Tom is once again forced to discard a card, with Terence ditching another land and losing 3 more life. I block the Many-Mouthed Giant with a single Thopter, and Tom passes to Thomas.
Thomas begins his turn by casting Drannith Magistrate, adding to his menagerie of oppressive permanents. Satisfied with his play, he passes the turn.
I draw, putting a 5th Foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas, and then cast Wing Splicer. I create a 3/3 Golem token with the Artificer's ETB, move to combat, and create a 2/1 Mir with Brudiclad's ability. Not yet finished, I transform all of my tokens into copies of my Golem and swing all 6 of my untapped metal men at Tom. Unable to block, he takes 18 damage, and I end my turn.
Terence draws 2 cards and discards 1 with his Blue Shrine, and then activates Sisay's ability. In response, Thomas flashes in Avon Mind Sensor, forcing Terence to search the top 4 cards of his library rather than the whole thing.
Now that is a hate bear I can get behind.
Hate bird. Terence fails to find a legendary permanent with mana value 3 or less in these cards, sighs deeply, and passes to Tom. Tom responds to this by casting Mausoleum Secrets, and Martin reminds him that he can only search the top 4 cards of his library.
I do love being the bearer of bad news in circumstances like these.
Tom puts Demonic Tutor into his hand this way and activates Anya, discarding Stinkweed Imp. He chooses to draw a card rather than dredge the Imp, and with no further interruptions, moves to his turn.
Instead of drawing, Tom dredges 5 to return the Stinkweed Imp in his graveyard to his hand. Next he casts Terminate, destroying Thomas's Magistrate, and then activates Anya, once again discarding his Stinky Imp. Tom dredges 5 rather than drawing, returning the Imp to his hand, and making it so that Anya's ability effectively reads, tap, mill 5.
A pretty good effect for his deck, really.
Tom then moves to combat, attacking me with Razaketh and paying 2 life to attack Thomas with his commander. Kroxa's ability triggers, forcing the rest of us to discard a card, and Terrence bins his first non-land card of the game. With no cards in hand, Thomas and I both lose 3 life and combat damage then occurs. Unable to block the flyer, I take 8 and Thomas takes 6 thanks to his Orbs of Warding preventing 1 damage. Pleased with the damage he has caused, Tom passes the turn.
In Thomas's upkeep, Archangel Avacyn transforms into Avacyn the Purifier, and Tom responds by paying 2 life to sacrifice his big game hunter to tutor for a card with Razaketh. He puts one of the top 4 cards in his library into his hand, and Avacyn's ability resolves, dealing 3 damage to each other creature, Tom, Martin, and Terrence. Mark of Asylum prevents Thomas's creatures from taking any damage, which I have to admit is a surprisingly synergistic play, and Martin's board is almost completely wiped out.
Stupid Psycho Angel Lady and her stupid Mass Lightning Bolt effect.
With his partial board wipe complete, Thomas moves to his pre-combat main phase, but Tom once again interrupts him by casting a sneaky tragic slip. Avacyn falls down, landing back in Thomas's command zone, and Thomas finally gets to continue on with his turn. He plays Temple of Triumph, which enters untapped and does not let him scry 1 due to Bloodsun's ability removing effect, and Thomas ends his turn.
I draw, put a counter on my enchantment, and play Spire Bluff Canal. Moving to combat, I make a Mir token and then pass to Terrence, who responds by casting Deadly Rollick. He extorts the spell, gaining 3 and having everyone else lose a life, exiles Aven Mindsensor with the spell, and then proceeds to his turn.
Terrence draws 2, discards 1, and casts Ghostly Prison.
If people could stop playing stacks cards, then that would be super. Just saying.
With nothing more to do, he passes the turn.
Tom plays a swamp and casts the Demonic Tutor that he tutored for last turn. He searches his library for a card, puts it into his hand, and casts Geth's Grimoire, which is really powerful in combination with his commander's ability. Moving to combat, Tom attacks me with Kroxa, triggering his ability. Terrence discards a non-land card, and Thomas and I both lose 3 life as neither of us have any cards in our hands to discard. Tom draws a card from his Grimoire, I block the Giant of Brudiclad, and Tom moves to his post-combat main phase. Here he casts Gamble, searching his library for a card and puts it into his hand before randomly discarding Stinkweed Imp. Out of mana, Tom ends his turn, to which Thomas responds by flashing in his commander.
At least she's calmed down a bit now. Thomas plays a Plains and then moves to combat. Here he attacks Terrence with Avacyn, dealing him 4 damage, and passes to Martin.
I draw, put a counter on Ominous Seas, and play Swift Water Cliffs. Next I recast my commander, move to combat, and create another Mir token to keep my previous Mir company. With nothing more to do, I pass the turn, to which Terrence responds by activating Sisay's ability. He searches his library for Hundon of Cleansing Fire, puts the shrine into play, and moves to his turn.
In his upkeep, Terrence once again activates his commander's ability, this time putting Sanctum of Stone Fangs into play from his library. He then gains 8 life and moves to his main phase, where he draws 4 cards and discards a card. His newest enchantment then triggers, gaining him 4 life and having the rest of the table each lose 4 life.
These shrines are really getting out of hand now.
Next, Terrence plays Command Tower and casts Day of Judgment. Tom responds this by paying 2 life and sacrificing Kroxa to his demon, drawing 2 cards thanks to Skull Clamp. He then searches the library for a card and puts it into his hand, and the board is wiped of all creatures. Pleased that no one can attack him for another turn cycle, Terrence ends his turn.
Tom plays Evolving Wilds, which Thomas reminds him cannot be sacrificed due to the effects of his Blood Sun.
Those wilds won't be evolving anytime soon.
Not to be deterred, Tom casts Chainer, Nightmare Adept, and then casts Animate Dead. He once again returns Razaketh to the battlefield this way, equips his Skull Clamp to the Demon, and passes to Thomas.
Thomas draws, plays a Plains, and passes the turn.
So exciting. I draw, put an 8th Foreshadow counter on my enchantment, and play Command Tower. With no other options, I tap out to recast my commander, move to combat, and create a Mir token. Out of mana and out of cards, I end my turn.
Terrence gains 8 life, drains everybody for 4, draws 4, and discards a card. He then casts yet another shrine, Honden of Life's Web, and passes to Tom.
Tom plays a swamp and casts Kroxa for his escape cost. Thomas and I both lose 3 life as we are unable to discard a card, and Terrence discards one of the many non-land cards in his hand. Moving to combat, Tom pays 4 mana to Ghostly Prison and attacks Terrence of Chainer and Razaketh. Lacking any creatures to block with, Terrence takes 11 damage, and Tom passes the turn. As expected, Thomas responds to this by flashing an Avacyn, and then moves to his turn.
Liking the look of Terrence's Ghostly Prison, Thomas decides to cast his own copy of it.
Hooray! Another obstacle to overcome when attacking!
He then moves to combat, attacking Tom with his Archangel, and Terrence responds by casting Obscuring Haze, preventing the damage that would have reduced Tom's life total to 0. Super annoyed by this, Thomas moves to his second main phase, and Tom responds by paying 2 life and sacrificing his commander to put a card from his library into his hand. Relatively safe behind the multiple cards that make up his pillow fort, Thomas ends his turn, and Martin responds to this by removing all 8 of the Foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas.
Release the Kraken!
He makes an 8/8 Kraken token and then moves to his turn.
I draw, putting a counter on my enchantment, and then move straight to combat. I create a Mir with Brudiclad and have both of my robot boys become 8/8 Krakens instead.
Yikes!
I know, right? I pay 6 mana to send both of my untapped Krakens and my commander at Terrence, dealing him 20 damage, and with nothing more to do, pass to Terrence. Tom responds to this by sacrificing Tormod's Crypt, exiling Terrence's graveyard, and Terrence proceeds to his turn.
Terrence gains 10 life in his upkeep and makes 5/1/1 spirit tokens. He then gains 5 life, having the other players lose 5, which knocks Martin and Tom out of the game. Knowing that he has no chance of winning in a one-on-one fight with Terrence, Thomas decides to concede, leaving Terrence as the game's victor. Well, that's it for another game. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. Don't forget that you can help to support the channel in 4 quick and easy ways: liking this video, subscribing, hitting that bell icon, and leaving us a comment. I read every one. Also, if you really like us, then consider checking out our Patreon page, where you can find rewards such as custom tokens and playmats for as little as $1 a month. That's all for now though, we'll see you next time. Stay awesome!